because Ayn Rand's a brilliant novelist, and we can't discuss one of her novels without at least making at least a cursory examination of the theme, of the style. Any questions on plot, characterization, or theme? All right, good. More time for me. Yeah.
Can you repeat again the difference between meaning and theme?
The theme states the core, the abstract core of what the story is about. In this case, individualism versus collectivism. You notice how broad that is? Now, Ayn Rand makes the point, I don't remember if it's in the Romantic Manifesto or if it's in the Art of Fiction Writing, that, or maybe both, that this doesn't tell us what the author's own stand is regarding the theme. Right? And so, for instance, you've read Ayn Rand's novel, We the Living, right? Now, We the Living is individualism versus collectivism in politics. That's the political version. And Ayn Rand points out, you've got the same theme, but written from the collectivist perspective. Andrei Taganov would be the hero. You have a whole different story, but same thing, right? Andrei Taganov would be the hero. Kira and Leo would be the villains. They're counter-revolutionaries plotting to destroy the workers' paradise. Therefore, the GPU, the secret police, are the good guys in suppressing, these Western imperialist spies and saving the workers' state. It would be the same thing. It would be individualism versus collectivism, but it'd be a different story, right? So, regarding the meaning, my question is, well, what is the author's attitude towards his own theme? Where does the author stand on this conflict? Is he individualist or collectivist, to put it simply? And, with Ayn Rand's case, it's obvious. The theme won't tell us that. The theme is just a broad abstraction. But the theme is just a condensation of the abstract meaning of the story. The story itself, the universe presented in the story, will certainly tell you what the author's stand is regarding his own theme. Right? That's why the meaning of the Fountainhead, what I call the meaning, is the importance of independent functioning in a man's life and the destruction wrought by second-handedness. Ayn Rand is unequivocally clear. She's not Shakespeare. She's not saying this is just different. These are just different people doing different things, and this is the result. And that there's no right or wrong. There's these different ideas that people have. It's not the case that one's better than the other. That's Shakespeare's view, right? Just holding up a mirror to life. It's the essence of naturalism. No, Ayn Rand definitely takes a stand. All the romantics take a stand. Dostoevsky's pushing Christianity in his novels. Hugo's pushing this religious humanism in his novels. Ayn Rand's pushing rationality and her objectivist philosophy in her novels. All the romantics take a stand on what's good, what's evil, what's right, what's wrong, what should men do, what should they not do. So the meaning of the Fountainhead then is very much in support of first-handedness and opposed to second-handedness. Ayn Rand's not pushing collectivism like any number of modern authors do, nor is she just holding up a mirror to life the way Shakespeare did. All right. Let's go to the videotape. Now, literary style is a very complex issue, and I don't claim to be an expert on this, but we have to say at least something in recognition of Ayn Rand's writing style. Now, listen to this. I want to read just from the first page of the novel. Howard Roark laughed. He stood naked at the edge of a cliff. The lake lay far below him. A frozen explosion of granite burst in flight to the sky over motionless water. The water seemed immovable, the stone flowing. The stone had the stillness of one brief moment in battle when thrust meets thrust, and the currents are held in a pause more dynamic than motion. The stone glowed, wet with sun rays. The lake below was only a thin steel ring that cut the rocks in half. The rocks went on into the depth unchanged. They began and ended in the sky, so that the world seemed suspended in space. An island floated on nothing, anchored to the feet of the man on the cliff. Let's skip down here a couple of paragraphs. He did not laugh as his eyes stopped in awareness of the earth around him. His face was like a law of nature, a thing one could not question, alter, or implore. It had high cheekbones over gaunt, hollow cheeks, gray eyes, cold and steady, a contemptuous mouth shut tight, the mouth of an executioner or a saint. He looked at the granite, to be cut, he thought, and made into walls. He looked at a tree, to be split and made into rafters. He looked at a streak of rust on the stone and thought of iron ore under the ground, to be melted and to emerge as girders against the sky. These rocks, he thought, are here for me, waiting for the drill, the dynamite, and my voice, waiting to be split, ripped, pounded, reborn, waiting for the shape my hands will give them. Now, this is beautiful writing. Does anybody notice anything about Ayn Rand's writing here? Yeah, Chuck. No, what is it?
Alex.
Alex, close. Go ahead.
It's a portrait of the character of Roark. It explains in a couple of paragraphs the essence of the character, both his metaphysical view of existence and his relationship to existence.
Yeah, notice that you're absolutely right. This gives us this, in a certain way, this gives us everything we need to know about Roark, right, in the first few paragraphs. It puts him in his natural setting. Notice, natural is the key word. Notice that the story does not open with Roark in society. It doesn't open with him in social institutions, dealing with those institutions that Toohey ultimately controls. It opens with him in nature. There's nobody around. There's no people, there's no buildings, and he's naked. It's just like him and the world, him and nature. The man who we find out much later is the great independent thinker who learns how to grow food, who learns how to build houses, who learns how to cure diseases, who learns how to deal effectively with nature. What did Bacon say? Nature to be commanded must be obeyed. This is the man who learns nature's laws and consequently can harness them in support of human life on Earth. But notice that nature is presented as a challenge. You got rocks and you got granite and cliffs and nature is presented as powerful, it's presented in this powerful way. But this man is very calm. He's very confident in dealing with nature. So you set the terms of Roark's cognitive MO. His focus is on the natural world. It's just like at the end of chapter 1, he's walking out of the interview with the dean. He's thinking, I got to figure out what makes guys like the dean tick. Eventually he figures out to be the second hand in this. And then he walks outside. He sees the sun striking the rocks, and the sun, the rocks. He starts thinking immediately of what he could build. Roark's orientation is towards nature, towards the sun and the rocks, not towards the society, not towards the dean and Toohey and guys like that. He knows he's got to deal with them, so it's important, but that's not what he loves. That's not what's great value to him. What's of great value to him is dealing with nature and building. Now, notice something, the way Ayn Rand conveys this effect. Nature's powerful, nature's challenging, let's put it that way, but this man is very confident in his ability to deal with that. Notice I rewrote this. The lake and the rocks gave off a challenging sense of power, but the man on the cliff, although facing daunting obstacles, felt confident in his ability to meet them. That doesn't quite get the power or the impact of the way Ayn Rand set this up, right? How did she do it? Look at that first paragraph. Explosion of granite. The one moment in battle when thrust meets thrust and the currents cause more dynamic than motion. So you have the lake below was a steel ring. The rocks went on into the depth. You notice the way Ayn Rand writes? She's writing in nouns, right? These are entity terms. First of all, she's not writing adjectives. Ayn Rand uses adjectives very sparingly, and when they do, they consequently have the power of infrequency. She's writing in nouns, and not only is she writing in nouns, she's turning nouns into action nouns. It's almost a Heraclitean world in a way. Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher, who believed everything is motion, everything is change, everything is process, except, there's a big exception. If I understand Heraclitus accurately, he's saying there are no entities, there's no being, there's only becoming. There's not a podium here. There's just podium. That's not even a word. There's not a table over there. That's tabling. It's just a center of activity. But Ayn Rand's saying no. There are entities. This is an Aristotelian universe. Entities in constant motion. Look at the way she uses nouns. A frozen explosion of granite. I mean, explosion's a noun, right? It's a thing. It's an action. But explosion is a noun. But think of it as an action noun. You could use nouns as verbs, in a certain way. They're verb nouns, if I can coin, or noun verbs, if I can coin a term. She's using action nouns to capture the dynamism of nature. Thrust meets thrust. A thrust, of course, is a noun, but it's an action noun. Currents. A current is a noun, but it's an action noun. The current of the stream, the current of electricity. Notice the way she writes in nouns, using action nouns to denote dynamism. This is brilliant writing. It's beautiful. It's powerful. I like it. The lake is a thin steel ring. You know, rocks went into the depth. They ended in the sky. There's the world. There's the space. There's an island. There's the feet. There's the man. There's the cliff. She's focused on entities. If you know your history of philosophy, this is an Aristotelian universe. To Aristotle, what he calls the Greek term ousiai, primary beings or entities. The essence of reality is things, not feelings, not a faith-based supernatural realm, not just action. There's things in action. Things are constantly in action, but there's things acting. And Aristotle points out you can't just have action without things acting. To have action means something is acting. And Ayn Rand's focused on things. And again, notice the way she integrates her own theme into her method. Or maybe her theme evolved from her method. Her method is to focus on nature, to focus on entities, to focus on primary being, which is not society. It's nature. It's things. And again, her own method necessarily is independent because that's her orientation. No accident, and her theme is to support independence. So, the man, in this case Howard Roark, knows even in repose, he exhibits more robust vitality than the rocks and the cliffs. Notice what she says. He looked at the ground. To be cut, he thought, and made into walls. He looked at a tree to be split and made into rafts. You see now the verbs come in. The man is going to act right now. He's cutting, he's splitting. He's going to melt the iron and emerge as girls. These rocks are here for me. The anti-egos have a field day critiquing this, right? These rocks are here for me, waiting for the drill, the dynamite in my voice, waiting to be split, ripped, pounded, reborn, waiting for the shape my hands will give them. So notice that man, even in repose, he hasn't jumped into the water yet. He's standing naked on the edge of the cliff. He exhibits more robust vitality than the rocks and the cliffs. He will cut, split, pound, and reshape them, which makes him a cutter, a splitter, a pounder, a reshaper. And in this capacity, of course, he overmasters the forces of nature. So Ayn Rand's very theme, that the human mind, the independent mind, can understand nature and thereby convert its power to promote human life on Earth. Her theme here is actually used. It's applied in her very style of writing, and I think her identification of the theme comes from her method of thinking, her lifelong method of thinking. This is the way she always thought. This is the terms in which she thinks. This is consequently the terms in which she writes. Since writing is just thinking on paper, these are the ways. This is the method that she uses to think. This is the method she uses to write. And consequently, from her own method of the independent mind focused on the world of entities, she derives her